welcome to the Village Online. We are so glad that you've chosen to be with us. And I'm thinking the next 20, 25 minutes are going to be very beneficial. Hope you can stay with us, and I hope this will have some meaning to you that'll make it a significant lesson. Because of my father's job, I lived in Johannesburg, South Africa when I was in the 5th grade. And my sister and I, we would walk every morning to the Roseneath School. And it was a school for people from other countries, diplomats, and also people who were there whose parents were working on short-term assignments. And it was a great school. I'm glad I got to go there. But one of the things that was really different for me is every day, it wasn't a Christian school at all, but every day we would have a Bible story. They were working their way through the Bible. And I didn't have any Christian background, really. I had, I think, been in church when I was a toddler, small child. But I didn't know any of the stories, and every morning, that's how they would start the day, which was very cool. And one of the stories that I remember, in fact, I think it was the first one they did when I started going to the school in January, was the story that I'm going to talk to you about today. My initial reaction to hearing the story was one of total fascination. I remember as a 5th grade boy, eyes wide open, ears wide open. I thought, this is the coolest story I've ever heard in my life. It was captivating to my young ears. I did not realize that there were profound lessons that I could learn from the story. I only knew it was one of my favorite hours of the day to hear our teacher basically just read the story from the Bible and just give very few little remarks. I loved it. So, as we are continuing our series, A New Look at Some Old Stories, I want to tell you the story that fascinated me as a child, and I want to see if maybe we can see some things in it that will be helpful for us. Marcus Borg is a name that I hope you'll get familiar with. He is a theologian. He is one of my heroes. I've read everything that he's written. In his seminal book, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, he said something that resonated with me. He said this: all theology, or our reflecting on God, begins as autobiography. Our spiritual voyage with God commences as a personal narrative, a journey that belongs to me, a journey that belongs to you in partnership with God. In some way, at some point, we embark on this odyssey alongside the divine, an expedition that molds our convictions or our theology regarding life and the world we inhabit. This voyage intricately sculpts our perspectives on every aspect of existence. This happens for me so much when I read these Old Testament stories. They are fanciful. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of things I don't understand. But there's also a lot of stuff that just resonates with me. And I think that's going to happen to you as well. My hope is that the life of Jacob, which is who we're going to be talking about today, will resonate with you, and you're going to be able to put yourself into the story and maybe feel some of the things the writers of this inspired text were wanting us to feel, so we can kind of open ourselves up maybe to God in a fresh way. Are you ready? Let's dive in, okay? Jacob's story is found in the book of Genesis. We're still in the book of Genesis. We'll be in the book of Genesis next week as well, chapters 25 through 35. Again, you don't have to do this, but I would encourage you, if you wanted to read something pretty cool, read those chapters, and it'll give you good insight on the story. The story of Jacob from the Bible is a captivating tale filled with intrigue. It's filled with deception. It's filled with divine encounters. And it is filled with personal transformation. It is a very human story, and our hero, Jacob, one of the things I love about him, he is quite flawed. In fact, a lot of our Bible characters are quite flawed. I think if I were writing a religious book, I would think I would kind of clean a lot of that up. But I will say this, to the Bible writers' credit, there's a lot of flawed characters that they put front and center, and you'll see Jacob is that. Let's start with his birth. His parents are Isaac and Rebekah. Do you remember Isaac? Isaac was the poor boy whose dad was Abraham, and Abraham thought that God wanted him to sacrifice Isaac on an altar to kill him as a sacrifice to God. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I think it was helpful to many people to see that you don't sacrifice your children. That's not what God ever is asking you to do. Never, 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 never. And so that's who the guy is. It's Isaac. He's now grown up. He's a grown man. He's married to Rebekah. And Rebekah gets pregnant, and she realizes there is a lot of activity going on in her womb. Genesis chapter 25, verse 22. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, again, this is ancient writing. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. Esau means hairy. Not a great description for a baby. He is red and he is hairy, and so they name him Hairy. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. The idea is the younger baby is trying to grab the older baby's foot almost as a way to pull himself out first. He was named Jacob, and Jacob means to grab the heel, or the supplanter, which means to replace, or to trip up, or to overthrow, or the most common name that we have seen for Jacob is trickster. He is trickster, and you're going to see a lot of why he is called that. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. Interesting verse, verse 27, the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Verse 28, Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So you get the idea? One of the guys, Harry, Esau, he's in the old days, long time ago, we'd say he's a man's man. He's a hunter. He's an outdoorsman. He likes killing stuff. Boy, the dad, Isaac, he resonates with that. He loves that because he gets fresh, wild food killed for him, while Jacob likes to kind of stay around the camp. He's not somebody that wants to go out and do that. He's a softer person than the rougher, more rugged Esau. That's a great story, and great stories always have conflict, and this story starts out with conflict. Can you feel it? You've got the younger son trying to grab the older son's foot as he's coming out of the womb. You've got dad liking the older son because he's rugged, mom liking the younger son. A lot of conflict is going on. Things are going to get messy because of the birth order of the older being the leader, the younger being the follower. That's the way it's supposed to happen normally in most families. We're going to see that doesn't work out. And dad likes boy number one and mom likes boy number two. And that's kind of not a good thing, but that's what we find in the story. So here's one of the big things that happens. One day, Esau comes home and he is famished. Jacob, the homebody, is there cooking some stew. And Esau asked for some. And Jacob, the trickster, said, "Well, I will give you some if you swap it for your birthright." Now, birthright, that's like your first place. That's like your part of the inheritance. That's your position as the number one son. So Esau's starving, and Jacob says, "Yeah, I'll give you some stew. Just trade me the stew for the birthright." Now, Esau is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and he says, "Look, I'm hungry. I don't care about the birthright. Just give me some of your red stew, and you can have the birthright." Jacob said, "Will you swear to it?" And Esau swore to it, and he gave him the soup. And the reason they made a big deal about the red soup, the word for red is Edom. And later we're going to discover that Esau is considered the father of the Edomites, and so the red stew and the red color of his complexion when he was born, there's a lot of that that's going on here. But Esau screwed up. He screwed up. He did a dumb thing because he was hungry. Now Jacob has the birthright. He will be getting the older boy's inheritance. He is now number one. He is in the number one seat. And in this family, the tension is beginning to build. Genesis chapter 27. When Isaac was old, now this is the second big thing that happens. When Isaac, the dad, is very old and his eyes were so weak that he no longer could see, he called for Esau, his older son, and he said to him, "My son." "Here I am," Esau answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man, and I don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare for me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Just a little background. In the Old Testament, in the ancient world, the act of a father giving his blessing to his older son held significant cultural and religious importance. This practice was not merely a casual gesture, but carried profound consequences for the recipient's future. The blessings from the father to the eldest son signified several things. It signified inheritance. The blessings often included a declaration of the recipient's right to inherit the family's wealth, property, leadership responsibilities. It involved spiritual leadership. The blessing could also convey spiritual authority, leadership within the family. It involved family legacy. It represented a passing of the family torch from the dad to the son. They saw it as a big, big, big deal. I prayed for my older son, Ray, my younger son, Ethan, and that's just what we do. When they would pray that last big blessing, it was like they were conveying all these special things, these attributes, and it was always to the oldest son. So that's what's happening. In the case of Isaac, he was intending to bless Esau. He was following the cultural norm of bestowing the birthright and blessing upon the eldest son. Let's get back to the Bible story. So you've heard what's happened, right? Isaac has said, "Listen, I'm old, I cannot see. Will you go to the field, kill some wild game, make it up really good for me, bring it back, I want to eat, and then I'm going to pray blessing for you." Verse 5, Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. What do we know about Rebekah? She doesn't like Esau as much as she likes Jacob, right? She likes Jacob. He's her favorite. So she's listening. She immediately goes to Jacob and she says, "Quick, go kill 2 goats and bring them to me. I'm going to make something really tasty, and then I want you to take it in, and I want you to get the blessing from your father." And Jacob is like, Mom, that won't work. Dad will know it's me. It's not Esau. Esau is hairy. Esau is rough. I'm soft. But the mom says, "Let me worry about that. You just go do what I told you to do." So he goes and kills 2 goats, and he returns, and she begins to prepare the meal. And then she goes and gets some of Esau's clothes. Why would she do that? Because they would have a certain Esau smell to them. And she has Jacob put on these clothes. And then she covers his hands and the smooth part of his neck with goat skins. Why is that? Just in case the father wants to caress his son's face, he's going to think that this is Esau. Interesting story. I wish you could have seen my 5th grade eyes listening to this story. I'd never heard anything like it. Genesis 27, verse 20. Jacob comes in and has brought the food, and Isaac says, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" Now listen to what Jacob said. Jacob is a trickster. Jacob doesn't have a lot of morals. "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" the blind father asked. And Jacob says, "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Isaac says, "Come close so I can make sure you're my son." Genesis 27:25, Jacob brought it to him, the food, and brought him some wine, and the father drank. And then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So Jacob went and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him And he said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness and abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." So here Jacob is, the trickster, with the costume on, and he just received the blessing, which in the ancient world was a big deal. After Isaac finished blessing him, Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, this is verse 30, and his brother Esau comes in from hunting, and he finds out what has happened, and Esau is ticked to the max. Verse 36, Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob, or trickster? This is the second time he's taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing." And then he asked, "Haven't you reserved, Father, any blessings for me?" And Isaac, old and feeble, says, "I have made him Lord over you, and I've made all of his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Basically, he's like, "Yeah, you screwed up. My bad, but you screwed up. He got the blessing. You didn't." So you see the tensions building, building, building. And Esau says, "Well, I'm going to kill my brother. I'm going to kill him." And Rebekah hears this, and Rebekah goes and finds Jacob, and she says, "You've got to get out of town quickly. Your brother is so mad, he's going to kill you." So Jacob has to leave home. Fearing for his life, I'm imagining he's in his 20s, maybe 30s, fearing for his life, Jacob flees to Beersheba in Haran, which is the homeland of his mother, where he takes refuge with his uncle Laban. He's basically told, go there, find a wife from those people. Maybe Laban's daughters would be good wife prospects for you, but you've got to get out of town because your brother is mad. He's going to kill you. Chapter 28, verse 10, Jacob leaves Beersheba and set out for Haran, and when he reached a certain place, he stopped because the sun had set. So now this is one of those things in the story that I hope will have some application for you. I can't relate a lot to the early stuff, right? I didn't grab anybody's heel coming out of my mom's womb. I never have stolen anybody's birthright. I don't know a lot about that stuff. It's a funny story. It's an interesting story. Can't really relate to it. But now I can. Jacob is running for his life, and on his way to where his uncle lives, he stops to kind of settle down for the night. And I want you to get this. The names Beersheba, where he is coming from, and Haran, those aren't just random names. The significance is this. He is from this one place, Beersheba, and he is going to this other place, Haran, and this is raising enormous questions within him. He's not super religious. He's not super spiritual. We don't get a sense that he fears God in any meaningful kind of a way, doesn't have great respect for God. He's kind of a shyster, kind of a trickster. But he has always kind of thought he was at least under, in some way, the coverage of God when he was in his father's house. Now he is going to an entirely different territory, and he's not sure God is going to be there. He's running for his life. He doesn't know exactly what the future holds. And so the big dramatic question for Jacob is God going to be with me? I don't know. This is what happens in the story, chapter 28, verse 10. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head, and he lay down to sleep. And he had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord. And he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go." Think about that just a minute. Now, this is not somebody that has a sterling reputation. This is somebody that doesn't have a good reputation. This is somebody who doesn't know anything about anything. But he senses in this dream God saying, "I'm with you. I'm with you." Do you know "I'm with you"? That's the first time that occurs in the Bible. That's one of the greatest phrases in all of history. God saying, I am with you. And this is the first time it appears. Jacob sees the vision of angels ascending and descending, and then there's the vision of this transcendent God saying, I'm the Lord, I'm the God of your father Abraham and Isaac. I will go with you wherever you go. This is God with this ladder or with this stairway, and God is at the top. And the idea of this story is not that we have to do special things or that we have to go to special places to be with God, but that God is with us, even in the most ordinary places in our lives. Genesis 28, verses 16, when Jacob awoke from his dream, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, he took some stone and he placed them under his head. He set up a pillar, which was like a memorial, and he poured oil on top of it, and he called that place Bethel, which means house of God. He said, this is a memorial. I feel it right here. This is where God is. This is the house of God. So here's the first big thought I want to hit you with. I hope you're staying with me. First big thought, Jacob thought he had left it all. He had left his home. He had left his dad. He had left his mom. He had left his brother. And he had left everything that was familiar to him. And he was sure he had left God, the God of his grandfather and the God of his father. But suddenly in his dream or his vision, he sees that God is present and God is active right here and right now. That was a huge surprise. I've known people who saw God only residing like in a church building. Have you known people like that? They would talk softer when they were in a church building because this is the house of God. This is where God resides. But they didn't think about God in their car. They didn't think about God residing in their home. They didn't think about any of those things. They only thought about God in the church. It was still a relatively new thought that God could transcend one city, that God actually could be wherever you were. God wasn't just in Ur of the Chaldeans where Abraham had been. God wasn't just in Beersheba where Jacob was. God could be wherever they were. That's a huge thing. You want me to tell you what I think is the most profound thought the Apostle Paul brought to his writings in the New Testament? My take, most profound thought, is when Paul said, your bodies are the temple of God. Your bodies are the temple. God doesn't dwell in these temples made by hands. God dwells within you. That was profound. Well, this is centuries before, and I think Jacob's getting a little taste of that. God, he at least is thinking, God is with me wherever I go. Rob Bell, in his book, Everything is Spiritual, Finding Your Way in a Turbulent World, said it like this: Jacob is waking up from a dream, but he's waking up in a larger sense as well to the divine presence in all of life. He is beginning to understand something that most people never get. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to say this to yourself every day this week. If you remember it every day this week, then just keep saying it. Say it every day until it becomes a part of who you are. The divine presence is everywhere. Can you say that right now with me? The divine presence is everywhere. The divine presence is everywhere. I try to live every day with that in the forefront of my mind. The divine presence is everywhere. Every person you meet, every interaction that you have, every country you go to, every gathering you're ever a part of, every good and kind person you ever sit down with, and every not so good and not so kind person you ever sit down with, the divine presence is there in every encounter, every scene, every meal that you share. The divine presence is there. Every hospital room, every jail cell, everywhere. I remember about 30 years ago beginning to say to myself, Ray, you have never locked eyes with any person on this earth that doesn't matter to God. That was the beginnings for me of coming to a point where now I can say the divine presence is everywhere. Last week, Jane and I were in the Pacific Northwest. I'd never seen beauty like I saw last week. driving up the Oregon coast and seeing the redwoods on the right and seeing the Pacific Ocean on the left and seeing these huge rocks jutting out of the ocean and seeing sea lions and seeing whales. And it was spectacular. Wasn't hard for me in that setting to say the divine presence is here. But you know what? The divine presence is everywhere. Jacob was just beginning to get a little bit of that, and I hope you will get that. Not just church, not just in a building. The divine presence is everywhere. Now, let me tell you the next story, and I won't give you a ton about it, but it's just a quirky little funny story that involves Jacob. Jacob goes to his uncle Laban, different territory, far, far, far away from where he's from, and he is smitten by Laban's youngest daughter, Rachel. I mean, she knocks him out. He falls in love. He goes to Laban. He says, I want to marry your daughter. And Laban says, tell you what I'll do. You work for me 7 years and you can marry her. And so he said, that's no sweat. And he worked 7 years for her. And he is going to get to go into the tent on his wedding night. And he is going to get to consummate the relationship with his bride. Except Laban is a trickster just like Jacob was a trickster. And Laban says, well, my older daughter needs to get married before my younger daughter. So he puts her in the room, in the tent, and Jacob goes in and Jacob consummates the marriage. Evidently, the lighting isn't very good. Maybe they don't talk. I don't know what the deal is, but he wakes up in the morning and says, what have I done? This is not Rachel. This is Leah. And so he is mad. He goes to Laban and says, what have you done? I didn't want to marry her. And Laban says, well, that's just the way it is. My older daughter needs to get married first, but you can now have Rachel. It's just going to cost you another 7 more years. And Jacob said, fine. And so now he's married to both sisters, and he is beginning his life. It's interesting. Rachel is the love of his life, but she is barren for a while. She does supply to him her maidservant named Bilhah. Leah is popping out babies like crazy, but she also supplies to him her maidservant Zilpah. And then finally, Rachel does have 2 children. She has Joseph. We'll be talking about him next week. And then she has Benjamin. And not to get too ahead of myself, but she dies in childbirth with Benjamin. But Jacob is married, and he is building a big life, and he's got these 4 women in his life, and he's got all these kids. And Laban is constantly trying to take advantage of him. So you have this trickster, Jacob, who's now getting taken advantage of a lot by Uncle Laban. So finally he says, look, it's time for us to leave. It's time for us to go home. I need to go back to Canaan. And so they actually leave secretly. Laban finds out and chases them down, and they just have a long talk with each other. And finally it's agreed that they'll go their separate ways. And so Jacob is on his way home. He has a huge caravan, and he has been marvelously successful. He has livestock, and he has servants, and he has all of this stuff, and he's heading home, and he knows what this means. He's going to have to meet up with his brother Esau, who he deceived and he robbed so many years ago. And he knows that Esau is living in the land of Seir in the country of Edom. And he knows that this could be the end of the road for him, but he knows he has to do it. So as he is traveling with this huge caravan, he sends out emissaries when he gets close enough that he knows that he is nearly in Esau's territory. He sends out emissaries and he says this to them. He says, this is what you are to say to my lord Esau. You say to him, your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban. I have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys and sheep and goats and male and female servants. And I'm sending this message to my Lord that I may in some way find favor in your eyes. And so he sends out these emissaries, and they come back, and the only thing they say back to him is Esau is heading this way, and he has 400 men with him. Put yourself in the story. You screwed somebody a long time ago. I mean, you really did some dirty pool a long time ago, and now it's payday, and he is coming, and he has 400 men with him. Jacob is growing unbelievably fearful. All he has done in his life is flooding his memory. It is almost uncontrollable what he is going through. Genesis chapter 32, verse 7, in great fear and distress, Jacob divides all the people up who are with him into two groups, and the flocks into two groups, and the herds and the camels as well. And he thought this: if Esau comes and attacks one group, maybe the other group will escape. So he sends them in two totally different directions. He's thinking maybe half is going to somehow be saved, but we are going to die. This is not looking good. And now he's at a stream, and the stream is a part of a river called Jabbok. And it's a beautiful place when you realize what happens there. At this stream of Jabbok, Jacob prays, and this is a different kind of prayer for him. It is a prayer. You know what they say the best prayer in the world is, and probably the most honest prayer in the world, is when you say, help, help, I don't know what to do, help. And we get a little bit of that in this prayer. Chapter 32, verse 9, Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, I'll make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and the faithfulness you have shown your servant. We don't get this from him any other place, but he's saying, I know that I've screwed up. I know I'm unworthy of all these blessings you have given me. I had only my staff when I crossed the Jordan, but now I have become two large camps. Save me. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I'm afraid he's going to attack me, and also he's going to kill the mothers with their children. But you have said, I'll surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. He is saying, oh God, please help me. Calvin Miller, used to read a lot of Calvin Miller back in the day, back in the 80s. He said this: sometimes we must deal with our past before we can hope to have any future. Sometimes that's an important thing, to just kind of reconcile some of the parts of your past. The past and the future are often separated by a tiny little stream, maybe called Jabbok, which is exactly what happened to him, this tiny stream. He gets on the other side of the stream and he says, I got to talk to God. I know what I've done wrong and I need your help. He then takes three different groups and he loads them up with all kind of gifts, and he sends them to Esau. He says, all these camels, all these goats, all these sheep, and they just all have all this stuff, and he's sending them three different times. So they're just going to overwhelm Esau with gifts because he is just hoping against hope that he's going to not get killed. Maybe his generosity is going to save the day. Jacob sends all of his men and all of his possessions across the Jabbok, and now he just has to wait. He takes his wives and the children across the Jabbok, and then he returns alone across the Jabbok stream, the Jabbok River, and he waits that night, kind of his rendezvous with destiny. What is going to happen? He is all alone, by himself, by the stream, all of his possessions, all of his wives, all of his children, they're on the other side. And this is my favorite part of the story. He is all alone. And at some point in the night, Jacob begins to wrestle with a figure, man, angel, godlike figure. It's in the story, and he wrestles with this figure until daybreak. Now you ask me, Ray, is this literal or is this metaphor? I've told you this before. You can believe however you want to believe it. For me, it's a metaphor, because I have felt that I have wrestled with God all night. But it wasn't a physical body. It was in my mind. It was wrestling with thoughts. It was wrestling with, that's what I think happened. But I don't want to fight with anybody, so you believe however you want to believe it. For me, that's what happened. He wrestled all night with his thoughts. What was he wrestling about? Was he able to accept God's love? God was saying to him, I promised I would bless you. I'm blessing you. Don't you understand? Maybe he was wrestling with, can he accept himself? He's been kind of a shyster. He's been a trickster. Can he get over that? Is there shame? Is he wrestling with his shame? I don't know what it is, but throughout the night he's wrestling. And then there is this strange part of the story where his hip is taken out of its joint. I don't understand it, but in the wrestling, his hip is hurt. Genesis chapter 32, verse 26. Jacob says to this figure that he is wrestling with, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Genesis chapter 32, verse 27. The man, angel, God, ask him, what is your name? And Jacob says, it is Jacob. And again, I think this is kind of important. I think the angel, man, God figure that's wrestling is saying, who are you? And he is saying, trickster. And he says, who are you, trickster? He's having to really be honest about who he is. Verse 28, then the man, angel, God, heavenly figure, metaphor, I don't know what you want to do with it, says your name will no longer be Jacob. Your name will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and you have overcome. That's where the name Israel comes from. The Israeli people believe Jacob's name was changed when he wrestled with God, and the angel said, you will no longer be trickster, Jacob. You will from this day forth be Israel. The next morning, Jacob heads across the Jabbok River to meet his fate. Jacob leaves Jabbok and he's wounded. He's wounded. He's now walking with a limp because of his wrestling with this angelic figure, and he is prepared to face his brother Esau. I love the words of the theologian Henry Nouwen. He says this, the hope is that Jacob, having wrestled with God, leaves Jabbok as a wounded healer, not as a wounded wounder. Isn't that a clever play on words? That's the hope. He has been wounded in this wrestling with this godlike figure. The hope is he will now be a wounded healer, not a wounded wounder. He comes to Esau, and guess what? It's not a fight. It's tears. It's two brothers embracing. It's forgiveness. It's beautiful. It happens in the most glorious of ways. Pete Enns, another one of my favorite writers, said this, wrestling with God may leave us limping, but it transforms our understanding of who God is. We always seem to see God better after the struggle, and I think that's true. If I could just inject a little bit of my story, I've wrestled with God a lot. And I've wrestled and thought, what is it all about? And I've received my own limps in this life. I've been wounded in this life, and I'm sure that I walk with a limp. Metaphorically, I walk with a limp. But that can be a beautiful thing. That can be a beautiful thing. This is my summary kind of the wrestling with God story. Listen to this. As twilight bathed the desolate wilderness, Jacob, a man of cunning and ambition, stood alone on the banks of the Jabbok River. Fear gripped his heart as he prepared to face his estranged brother Esau, whom he had wronged years ago. The weight of his deceitful past bore down upon him like a suffocating shroud. In the stillness of the night, a mysterious figure materialized from the shadows, a divine presence. Jacob knew not whether it was a man or angel, but he sensed it was a harbinger of reckoning. He wrestled with his celestial being, grappling with him and grappling with all of his might, unwilling to let go until he received a blessing. Their struggle raged on through the darkness, sweat and tears mingling as Jacob yearned for redemption. With a touch, the celestial being dislocated Jacob's hip, but still he clung to his adversary. I will not let go until you bless me, Jacob cried, his voice trembling with a newfound humility. With dawn's approach, the celestial being bestowed a new name upon Jacob. Israel is your name, meaning he who strives with God. As the morning sun bathed the land in a golden glow, Jacob limped away forever changed. He reconciled with Esau, embracing him with tears of remorse and forgiveness. Jacob's night of wrestling with God became a testament to his transformation. His cunning had evolved into courage, and his ambition into humility. He emerged from the darkness a man reborn, bearing the name Israel as a symbol of his newfound faith and strength, ready to face his future with grace and resolve. I believe that can happen to each of us, but it means we wrestle with God sometimes. We wrestle with what we believe sometimes. We wrestle with the old that maybe a well-meaning preacher spoke to you 30 years ago, but you've wrestled with it, and it's like, I don't know that that's so, and we wrestle, and it's so hard. It's so hard. But we wrestle, and sometimes we come out of it with a limp. But it's a good thing because our hearts are changed and life becomes more meaningful. And I think we can get that from the Jacob story. Will you pray with me, please? Oh, wonderfully mysterious God, may we, like Jacob, realize you are always with us. Your divine presence is everywhere and in every person. And God, may we with humility be willing to strive with you, to wrestle with what it means to be aware of your divine presence. What does it mean to know we are forgiven for things in our past, things in our present, even things in our future? And God, what does it mean to walk with a limp? May we embrace those limps many of us have, and may we be, as Nouwen said, may we be wounded healers, not wounded wounders. And we pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Thanks for watching.
There are 3 ways you can give to support the Love Focused: culture changing, ever evolving, community building, Jesus-inspired work of the Village Church.